welcome to GizmoSapiens show 279. Um, so we're going to call this one Price Fixing, Plate Reading, and the Death of the Status Update. So institutional trust doesn't collapse in a headline. It erodes with kind of this idea of just this once exception. When cops use a nationwide license plate network, flock, to stalk their exes, when gas stations allegedly plug into AI that conveniently nudges everyone's prices higher, price fixing, and seed patents quietly give a handful of companies the veto power over what farmers and researchers can do. And when government talks about boosting trusted news while the rest of us get further down the feed, the pattern is hard to ignore. The systems we're told are neutral, objective, or for our safety keep revealing who they really serve. So people adapt. They stop posting. They stop mailing checks. They think twice about calling the police, trusting the courts, or believing that the information on the top of the feed got there purely because it's true. The story this week that Matt and I are going to talk about is not just tech gone wrong. It's what happens to a society when the tools and institutions wrapped in the language of trust and protection keep burning through that trust instead. So, with that intro, let's get into it. So, flock cameras and stalker cops. We've talked about this before. There have been numerous instances of cops stalking their exes, cops stalking their wives.
It's pretty prevalent,
And it's prevalent, and the idea, um, the problem with policing organizations and why there needs to frankly be a completely independent from the judiciary group who kind of an auditor general of police organizations at both the state level and the federal level that do not report through the same change of commands that normal, like through the DOJ or the FBI or your state bureau of investigation, is because absolute power corrupts absolutely.
and I think these kinds of things are, as you alluded to in the open, these are the things that wear down trust in institutions that otherwise have benefited from having a huge benefit of trust.
Yes. Yes. Well, the thing is you still drive by and you don't see it as often as you used to, which is kind of interesting. It's an interesting message, but you'll still see communities who on their police cars, with their community name, will say to serve and to protect. And the thing is nobody believes that anymore. Nobody.
Including the Supreme Court, which
Exactly.
has ruled that there is no legal responsibility for a law enforcement officer to protect anyone other than themselves.
Yes. But let's go back to the whole idea. I want to bring this up because it's gotten more pervasive than the couple of stories we talked about in the past about police officers, abusing flock. So, um, 18 police officers have been arrested, fired, or investigated for using flock automated license readers to stalk ex-partners and other personal targets. In one Florida case, an officer ran his ex-girlfriend's plate 69 times and repeatedly queried plates belonging to her family, ultimately being charged with stalking and computer misuse.
I got nothing for that.
And
I
then,
assure you that the union was super backing this guy and making sure that he was able to put the costume back on and put his shiny tin badge back on and his gun and go and be a bastion of protect and serve.
well, the thing is Flock is saying this is, these are all one-off incidents, and
Now,
but
one off is enough.
exactly, once is enough. And the thing is
And they
so
don't plug the hole.
Correct. Well,
The
no. Let me read you a couple things. So, civil rights groups argue that these are the tip of the iceberg because these are only the cases that were so egregious that they got caught,
yeah.
and to trigger a firing or an arrest. How many times have officers been slapped? I mean, I have friends who, again, this is a private company that does this, but they're scouring public data collection, but everybody knows the company LexisNexis. I mean, that's how lawyers get a lot of their information when they're suing individuals or companies. They have a LexisNexis subscription, and it's all publicly available records that they have access to. I had friends who had relatives who worked for LexisNexis, and I had friends who worked for LexisNexis. And a good example is my one buddy. Whenever he would date a woman, he would put her details in and he'd look her up in LexisNexis, find out if she had an arrest record, bankruptcies, all this. And while I can't fault him for wanting to know that beforehand, to understand if this is going to be a good time or this is going to be something more permanent, um, you know, again, that's an abuse of that information. But it's not illegal in that case because it's public record. And that's also what Flock argues is that they don't argue that the access to the data isn't illegal or misused, but they argue that the data in and of itself isn't illegal. And that technically is true because when you're in public, there is an expectation, like you're not on your property, uh, in your house, whatever. There is no expectation that people can't take pictures and things
But
like
my
that of you.
car is my property. My property becomes mobile.
Yes, that's one of the issues. But in the case of these 18 officers, Flock is saying that it's aware of 15 abuse incidents out of roughly 140,000 monthly users, and they keep logs that make it rare as they are able to audit this. That's like the NSA. If I joke, people are. Yes, has the NSA spied on domestic Americans? Without a doubt. But and people are worrying about NSA wiretaps and all this other stuff. The problem is NSA, there's so many people, 330 million people, and the amount, just as actual US citizens, there's more than 330 million people in the United States. We know that. Um, the um, the amount of data and stuff, they have to be looking for you to be able to tap you because
But that's the
the
point.
the most of it is noise, and that's the issue with Flock.
This is why all of these systems should require an actual warrant. Just being able to tap into your computer as a cop and say, show me Christopher Centers, and be able to pull all that crap up without a warrant
Exactly.
is illegal.
Yeah. It
They should not have the ability to even do it.
Correct. And you know, the because with that there's no chain of custody. You know, Flock is saying, yeah, we're keeping logs. Yeah, they might log it, audit. What are the logs auditing
I
in reality?
assure
And
you,
and what is what and because again, this is logs are digital data. What is being manipulated by Flock to hide abuse?
right. So what's going to happen is what Flock will do when they get the subpoena to come bring your records to court to prosecute one of these cases, suddenly they're going to be like, well, we can't do that. That's, this is privileged information.
Correct.
That's exactly what they're going to do.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, and that's why warrants exist. There's a chain of command. What happens is the local prosecutors, if they want to see that data, they have to make a case to a local judge. That all gets filed and put on record. That local judge signs off, and writes. They have to write. It's not like he just signs his signature on it and it's okay. He actually has to give justification. I believe that there's probable cause here, based upon this and this and this, and so I give.
And there are consequences if they get it wrong.
Correct. Correct.
That's the Where are the consequences for Flock allowing this to happen? They're going to get sued bad.
And Flock is definitely they've got lobbyists and legislatures in the local governments, in state governments, in federal government to block warrantless or or not to block warrantless access. They want warrantless access.
Here's the other thing that I fear about Flock becoming a household name. They're not the only company that does this crap.
Correct.
There are at least two others that I could think of off the top of my head, and I would imagine there are many, many more.
Well, what's funny is and I don't know if I have that one in here, but there is a engineer in Virginia who has been arrested. Uh, I think he's been released on bail, but he's being charged with the vandalization of 14 flock cameras. Um, but the public outcry, he has they somebody set up a GoFundMe, and there's hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations to cover his legal fees. It's how much people oppose it. And then there's been a Wisconsin town, because again, Flock came in and bought rights to, I don't even know how they did it, because you would have had to, but I think before towns understood what was going on, they allowed them to come in and buy rights to put their Flock cameras in. But there's one Wisconsin town where the city government is now putting garbage bags
Dayton's doing that.
over the Flock cameras, um, because they don't want Flock to be, the cameras to collect data in their. And again, the numbers don't the numbers are completely accurate in that they do not deter crime. You know how the other thing is look how long CCTV has existed in the UK, and what they have found over time is that it does not deter crime. All it does is it makes it actually ups the level of the criminal. It makes them become more educated how to obscure themselves from cameras, because they know they're going to be seen on camera, how to obscure the camera so that they don't get seen doing this. Um it just causing all kinds of issues. And then on top of that, you have all the accuracy problems. So one of the newest ones is and this one was recounted by Tom's Hardware, because it was one of their reviewers, um, was driving a Range Rover loaned to him by Range Rover for a car review, and he was tracked for days by Flock cameras, and a data entry error marked the plate on this borrowed car as stolen. So uh, police eventually boxed him in a Minnesota parking lot and detained him for about an hour before the plate had never been stolen. Investigations and lawsuits have flagged uh, the issue, because the Flock camera and what it automatically determined that the license plate number was a digit off. And so they had flagged 4 different plates in 4 different states and detained 4 different people illegally.
Now, here's the thing that will eventually happen. This is going to happen in one of those jurisdictions where you get one of those Billy Badass cops who is going to shoot and kill somebody and then find out, oh, the AI made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
We're sorry we killed you.
Yeah.
And that's going to be okay.
Well, or
This is why one is one
one
too
too
many.
many. Yep. Absolutely. Well, and it's not just Flock either. As these police departments uh, are not, it's misreading plates. There's high error rates, and that's what people who have been automate or auditing Flock data have found out, is that the error rates are super high, particularly in really, really crowded jurisdictions. Um, and then the cops are not doing due diligence before to validate that.
Flock themselves seem I don't remember the exact number. They released a number. I'm going to say 1%. Out of all the millions of scans they do, 1%. Now, 1% of millions
A
is
huge error rate.
a huge error rate. So this system is not flawless like they claim
Well,
it
it is.
is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, this is a system that is being used by law enforcement who have been empowered to take your life for the slightest infraction of anything.
Correct.
This should not be allowed.
Correct.
If Lowe's wants to put cameras in their parking lots to turn over a screenshot of the car that they think stole merchandise, that's on them and they hold the liability for that.
Correct.
That's not what's happening when police are accessing this system entirely on their own. There is no liability
Well,
and no
and,
consequences.
and so the thing is it's not like, and Ohio's going to be an interesting case in this case. It's not like um, local communities are gaining all kinds of money that they can then protect against litigation. All it takes is one for a community to go out,
They're
and we got
paying Flock for these cameras.
correct
So not only are they not bringing any money in, they're paying Flock for these
for
cameras.
liability.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about we've got a township police department around here who has gone bankrupt. Actually, the whole township has gone bankrupt. Now, the state's kind of propping them up for right now, but that's not going to last. Um, and this is on a case that happened like 20 years ago or something. But a police detective didn't do his due diligence, went after somebody, killed them in pursuit, and it took like 20 years for the it to get through the courts, but the a jury ruled that the township owed them like 20 or 30 million dollars, more than the township has in their bank accounts and brings in a year in tax revenue. And they got to pay it. It's not like, a civil case where, they sue an individual who makes $45,000 a year and the jury awards them $2 billion, and they're never going to be able to pay that, and their descendants are never going to be able to pay that. Um, this is a government entity, and on the flip side, though, at least in Ohio, the government entity is on the hook for this money, and so they're freaking out because uh, that means that they aren't going to have money for fire. They're going to have money for police, which I think at this point they don't
It's
need it.
probably a good thing, yeah.
Um, you know, uh, Water in this township, the township water supply, it's all of that. Uh, and so the state of Ohio is trying to figure out with Miami Township, the state of Ohio, the Supreme Court says they got to pay it, but the state of Ohio is trying to figure out, okay, so who takes over the government responsibilities because this government essentially is going to go defunct. Another good example of governments trying to figure out what's going on, and this is kind of more related to our released with this episode 179 will be the 179 Alpha episode, which is more about entertainment. But the BBC uh, has always made their money on television licenses. So you have to pay a fee per year for how many televisions you had in your house. That's why when you went to a lot of UK homes for I mean decades, they would have one television. Well, now that everything has moved to streaming, BBC's not making any money because people aren't watching televisions. They're not watching BBC programming. And so the BBC is about to go out of business. This is the same thing. What do you do? And what happens when more and more of that happens? I can see states like Massachusetts and Illinois and Ohio um, having more and more of these incidents happen, and you know essentially become bankrupt with no way to make up for it, because of liability issues.
This is why these municipalities should really think twice about what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely. Also, these municipalities should really think twice about what they're doing because of that erosion of trust.
Well, in you know, law enforcement, you will always hear them talking about like the erosion of their reputation. Well, if they would police themselves,
Correct.
maybe they wouldn't have that erosion of trust.
So this kind of brings me back to college. So um, when we were, I think I was a sophomore at that time in college, and I took sociology. We had to take a semester of psychology. I had to take a semester of sociology. I took a semester of sociology during summer school because it was like an 8-week class, and I got full credit. And the two guys who were teaching this were actually sociologist researchers who worked for the university, and this was their penance. The class that they had to one section of the class that they had to teach every year. And so our class was about this research project they were doing. Now you're talking about this is in the early to mid 90s. So this has been like 92, 93. And so there was a lot in this was in Ohio, Kentucky area. There was this uh backlash again against the police departments for discrimination. Was crime being carried out in a greater percentage by minority groups? Was that the actual number, or was it they were being targeted more than? And so these guys were the biggest dumbasses I ever dealt with, because I got to be in their class. I should have had an A, but I got to be in their class because one, I was bored, and two, I started arguing about their scientific uh, method.
Methodology, yeah.
Because what they did is they decided to collect all of their data that they were basing their paper on, that they were going to release, on a survey, a voluntary survey by the police departments in the states of Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky on whether or not they racially targeted their
Uh,
arrests.
so did they get a response, a
Well,
single response saying
one,
yes?
they, I,
Yes, we
no,
did that.
no,
Shocking.
they only got because they sent it to all the local police departments and all the county police departments and all the state police departments. They got less than 7% to respond. Now, I can imagine that the first thing that happened is when that landed on the police chief's desk, the county prosecutors were called in, and they said, "What should we do with this?" And most of them just said, "Put it in the garbage. File it in file 13." And the ones who did reply were probably not the police departments, but probably the county prosecutors where those local jurisdictions listed. And I even think out of the 7% that they got a response back, that they that nobody completely filled out the survey. uh that they probably got less than 30% of the survey back. And the only reason they did that was to show that, hey, we're willing to be transparent. But from a legal liability standpoint, which is what the county prosecutors are going to worry about, they aren't going to let you answer those questions. And so these guys made their determination of that, no, that, it was, that it wasn't racially based on the like 1% of data that they really got back. And I told him, I said, one, your sample size is too small. You can't draw any conclusions based upon the fact that you got less than 7% response, and then they didn't fill out the whole survey. I said, scientific methodology says that that's not enough. I said, the problem is in order for you to get real numbers and real answers to that, and I told him this, I said, I'm in college and I knew how the political system worked better than they did. I said, you're going to have to get like the government or the state Supreme Court to mandate that they fill this out and corroborate it with public records. I said that's the only way you're going to get real data and be able to draw an actual conclusion. But they were trying to fulfill the fact that somebody had given them research grants and they had to produce a paper, and so they were going to draw bad conclusions by taking bad money. And a lot of this flock stuff, the defense from flock is built on that same thing. Oh, we've only had 15 reported incidents, yet the news reports 18. Journalists have documented hundreds, if not thousands at this point.
Every day I'm finding a new one
Yeah.
that
And more cities are either telling flock to get the hell out, and when they don't get out, they're using their rights from the city perspective,
yeah.
because all the flock cameras are installed in city managed open spaces, which means they're
Well,
owned by the
except for
city.
the ones at like Lowe's.
Exactly, the ones at Lowe's and things like that. uh but so they're doing other things, like you said. The city of Dayton is covering them up. But you know why the city of Dayton is covering them? They've gotten sued. They not only have they had like 10 or 15 individual lawsuits, but they also have a class action lawsuit with like 50,000 respondents. And the class action one is really bad because it's about being they well, one, they're in the state of Ohio. We had uh license plate cameras to determine speeding, and then the state Supreme Court said no. And so the city of Dayton,
Unless
unless there
there
was
was an officer
or
monitoring the
monitoring
camera,
camera.
which
And so what happened is a few people who got these in the city of Dayton got these automated tickets, then asked for the officer to be in court. And the one time an officer did show up, is this now this is anecdotal, it's what I read and heard. He could not speak to any specifics, and the judge had to dismiss the ticket. So everybody who got a ticket from this automated system has now is now part of this class action lawsuit. City of Dayton cannot afford the liability because, again, in Ohio at least, there's court precedent that says no.
we shall see how all that develops.
Yes.
Dayton is particularly interesting that they've taken the action that they've taken uh, with the flock cameras in particular, because they are a municipality that has uh, continued with the speed cameras and the red light cameras,
Yeah.
even though the state has said, well, we're going to take whatever funding you get from that and we're going to subtract it from what's coming from
From
us.
ours. Yeah, exactly.
Which to me is, if you're the city, you're going to lose more money from the state than you are from these stupid cameras.
Yes.
I don't understand why you would make that decision. Safety? Safety?
Yeah, I don't know either.
I mean, I suppose you could make that argument, but I'm not buying it.
So, kind of along the same vein as the whole flock issue, we also have a lawsuit going on in California for something similar. Um, there is a company called Calibrate. And so there is a class action lawsuit accusing gas station operators and pricing vendor Calibrate of using AI tools to coordinate pump prices in a price fixing scheme in the state of California. So the plaintiffs claim the tool ingests competitor price data and recommends pump prices that keep a coordinated floor under competition, allegedly adding up to 30 cents per gallon in some areas and contributing to stations charging up to $7 a gallon. And then the complaint says it amounts to algorithmic price fixing in violation of California's Cartwright Act and a new law aimed at cracking down on AI enabled collusion. And so and this is particularly poignant because not only does California have a high population, concentration of population, they also have, of all the CONUS or the continental United States, they have the highest fuel costs because of all kinds of other state regulations and things about, the quality of fuel and the additives that have to be in the fuel and all this other things. Um, so this squeeze it's like an additional tax on top of the actual taxes. But taxes the state of California. I'm sure this would not go anywhere if the state of California was collecting 30 cents per gallon extra. But
The fact that some corporations doing it,
mhm.
yeah, that will not stand.
So, but basically what it does is, and uh, and I did not know this for years. I always assumed when you went to a BP station, it was owned by British Petroleum, or you went to a Shell station and it was owned by Shell Corporation, and that's not the case. They basically license their brand to what they call these companies that are called jobbers. And the jobbers, as part of their licensing, have to purchase fuel for their state. If you have a BP station, they have to purchase that fuel for that station from BP. And the reason, like, the difference between like Speedway gas, why is Speedway gas 20 cents a gallon cheaper than BP gas all the time? Well, it has to do with the amount of additives, the quality of fuel. Typically Speedway and Sheets and some of these other companies who have lower gas prices, Sam's Club, they don't have all the additives and things that are supposed to help your car, um, and get you better gas mileage and all this other stuff. So that's the idea, is that Shell and BP are giving you, there's added value for the dollar, even though it's all 87 octane gasoline. And so in this case, it's the jobbers using, basically colluding with each other, uh, to keep the gas prices all the same for everybody. So no station can, because the fact of the matter is gas stations don't make money on gas.
No, oh no.
The jobber wants you to come into their station to, so I just don't understand the appeal of doing this, uh, other than maybe you have a jobber who owns a whole bunch of like BP and Shell stations, and it forces the guys who sell the cheaper gas, the lower, technically, you can't see my air quotes, but the lower quality in air quotes gas, um, from selling at 20 cents or 30 cents cheaper per gallon, which would drive more people to their stores, because what they want you to buy is the overpriced pop and the overpriced chips and cigarettes and lottery tickets and the stuff from their stores, because that's where they make their money. If you, around us, and I haven't figured this out, because as more and more retail stores close, we seem to be getting more and more gas stations. And I don't mean just like a gas station, I mean like mega gas stations. We have gotten, in the last 4 years, Sheets has got a gas station on every corner. Wawa's building a gas station on every corner that Sheets hasn't found one yet. And we have a Buc-ee's. Why do we have all this gas? Because and the thing is all of them have these massive food courts, and like, you go into a Buc-ee's, it's like going into Walmart. You can buy t-shirts and shorts and flip-flops and camping gear and coolers and whatever. And dinnerware. Who wants Buc-ee's dinnerware? Uh, but you get all of that stuff at these gas stations, and that's where they're making their money. They wouldn't invest in that if that's not where they were making their money.
Yeah.
Fuel, and the other thing that they're making their money on, like Buc-ee's, is the car washes. Have you seen what it costs to get like a car wash? And
I,
they give you a discount if you fill up at Buc-ee's.
I haven't been over there yet.
But it's like,
I've been resisting.
I've been to a lot. I haven't been to the one, actually the new one near us at all, because it's in Hubertucky, where I do not want to go. Um, but I've been to the Buc-ee's in Alabama near where I work, and past the Buc-ee's in Southern Kentucky all the time. And they it they'll give you a $20 discount on a car wash, an automated car wash, when you fill up, and it's still like a $40 car wash. And there's people lined up doing it, you know. Give me a pressure washer and the hose on my house, and I'm happy.
We're good.
But and that's not this thing with the gas isn't the only place where we're seeing it. Walmart is a good example. Walmart has been and Walmart's even more, in my opinion, more devious than like this Calibrate company.
At least these guys are collaborating to keep the same price.
Correct.
What Walmart has considered
No,
doing.
no, no, no. They have been doing it. There's go look on YouTube. There's plenty of proof where people have shown where they've gone.
I know they were testing it, but I don't know
No,
that
they have done it.
they've actually.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that's really deceptive, because I caught it at our local Walmart, and hence why I haven't shopped in Walmart since last Christmas, is you'd have something that's marked down. It has marked down on the tag. You would scan it in the Walmart app, and the app says, yes, it is this cost. Or it would have like a markdown tag, but no price. And you would scan it and it would say, it's this cost. You'd take it up to the register and it would scan and be $2 more expensive. And I go, no, 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 no. The app said it's this. And they go, look, it's in store, or it's if you ordered it only. So if I had it delivered to my house using my Walmart Plus, well, I don't have Walmart Plus anymore, but using the Walmart, I could have got it $2 cheaper. But because I was in the store, it was more money. And there's been, Walmart has, we've talked about this in the past too, about these e-ink paper tags, like Kroger's uses them. Now, the thing is Kroger's has been audited by the state of Ohio, so they're very cognizant about not doing this, at least until they can figure a way to get away with it, which is, and the idea is appealing from an operations perspective for the store. If I don't have to print out new tags every time we restock or get a new product in, I can just change a electronic tag in my store to represent that, or if the product prices change. But at Walmart, and some of the Walmarts, because they haven't got the e-ink tags everywhere in all their stores yet. People have literally had to take pictures of the tag when they go up to the register, because by the time they pick something up off of a shelf and get to the storefront, it's $2 more expensive. Now, if they have a picture of the tag, they will honor the price. But if you don't have a picture of the tag, it's whatever the scanner at the front of the store says. And people have literally taken a picture, waited 30 minutes, gone back and taken another picture, and there will be a price difference. So they're definitely trying to do this whole surge pricing on all that Chinesium that they sell at Walmart. Um, I mean, my opinion is quit shopping at Walmart. You get Chinesium everywhere. Menards, Target, Amazon. Why am I going to Walmart where they have the worst produce in the nation? It might cost you more from the time you pick it up to the time you get to the register. And the funny thing is, although I have bought gas at Sam's Club, that same activity has made me not want to go into Sam's Club. Also, Sam's does not have the healthiest food options compared to Costco, so I tend to buy. If I'm going to buy food, I'm going to buy it at Costco. That's a whole nother. I think we had an episode
Yeah, we've talked about that at some
about
point.
how Costco is just the cult of Costco. You know. So let's move on to seed patent and stall innovation. So over the years, there have been. It started in the '80s when um, these like Conagra and some of these big agricultural companies who sold seeds were allowed to, and I have not figured out how the U.S. Patent Office allowed this to happen, but they were allowed to patent seed varieties, and it got worse as we were able uh, to sequence the genomes of these seed varieties, because then they allowed patent, or the the patents were already granted. And so the courts allowed people to protect their patents. And so, like individual farmers back in the '80s, this happened. It started in soybeans. They would collect like extra seed from the previous year to replant the next year. And they were suing farmers over this because they weren't buying new seed. And they were saying, well, no, this is a patented product. You cannot do this without paying, essentially a license to use it. And then there were farms, they started suing farmers. And the issue happened because they were winning in court and farmers were going out of business, having to sell their farms to pay the judgments that were raised against them. But farmers who were not even didn't even intend to grow the seeds made by Conagra and DeKalb and all of these companies, but because they would cross pollinate from the farmer next door to you to yours, and so then their genetics would show up in your seed stock, and so they would sue these farmers over it, and it became a big scam. Well, and then finally the Supreme Court in the late 90s gave a ruling that you cannot patent a genome, and it was all based on that. I mean, think about it. If you some of these biotech companies would patent people,
Oh, and they totally would.
I mean, they would. And so, I mean, it was a good thing that happened. But now we're still having issues with this because, again, it's who has the money to fight this in court. If I'm ConAgra and I don't want you to be using your seed, I want you to be buying seed for me. I can afford to file a lawsuit against you that might cost me, a couple $100 in lawyer fees on my swarm of lawyers that I have uh, to file against you. But what's happening is, um, because of this aggressive patenting of seed genetics, it is concentrated the control of key crops in the hands of a few large companies. And farmers and independent breeders argue that restrictive licenses and patent enforcement make it harder to experiment, save seed, or breed new varieties, which is slowing down the innovation in plant science. And the reality of it is we've been breeding the the seeds, or breeding the plants that we consume for thousands of years. And um, this whole patenting thing is making our food ecosystem more fragile because without the innovation that individual farmers bring to crossbreeding and all this other stuff, these companies, if a blight hits this company's variety of seed, the patented variety, and everybody is supposed to grow it, it kill. I mean, we have something much worse than the potato famine. We're already seeing this in bananas. But these companies say that they need these patents to protect their R&D investments. But again, the Supreme Court of the United States has a ruling that says you cannot patent genes. Why are we still fucking fighting over this?
Because it's money.
It's money.
I mean, this is where this will sound weird coming from me. There are some industries where I don't think capitalism benefits us. Now, most industries,
Do you see the WTF look on my face? No.
most industries, I'm on the other side of that argument. I think our food supply is one of those things that, like, we can't be in it for the money. We have to be in it for the
Of
altruism.
course. I agree with you. Well, the problem is,
Pharmaceuticals is another one.
yeah. Well, the thing about this, that about the whole these big agricultural companies, is they're also killing the American farmer. The United States is the breadbasket of the world. I mean, we export probably 60 to 70% of everything we grow, whether it's,
But hey, AI is gonna fix that.
yeah, it'll fix it.
AI is gonna go out there and tend that whole crop and
It'll fix it. We saw everything that Skynet can do. They won't need crops. Well, but they will. They'll need corn because they'll need to have corn so that they can operate the gas engines that they need to then power electricity. I mean, I laugh about that, but the reality of it is the agricultural industry drives more than just our food ecosystem. It also drives a good portion of our energy ecosystem.
Biofuels is still a big deal.
Absolutely.
I've never been a big fan of it, but it's still a thing.
So let's move on to the next thing.
Okay.
Um, so the UK government has a proposal to have platforms elevate trusted news sources. It's part of the whole, all this legislation coming out of the UK government, and now we have an even crappier Labour Party PM over there, um, because they want the messages to come above all the social media noise. Um, they're saying that this supporters of this, it's going to fight misinformation. Um,
Sure it is.
and give people reliable information, or more reliable sources during crises and stuff.
The Ministry of Truth
That's
will
right.
set you free.
Free. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I, I got nothing for that.
I know. I mean, to me, that just scratching my head, common sense stuff.
It's the UK. What do you expect?
I know. I know. So, on a more interesting thing, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past too, is that um, there are concerns that checks sent through mail are increasingly vulnerable to theft and alteration, which is kind of funny because when I think of that line, I think of "Catch Me If You Can," which was a real thing that happened. I mean, um, the movie stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, and it is a fictitious recreation of the actual events, but the events and the story itself is true about altering checks and uh in this case, they were, because the banking system was not digital at the time. um he was able to take advantage of the fact that there was this time lapse between when a check was written for cash and the bank would give cash, from a trusted account, to when it actually went to the bank that actually held the funds, and then the funds wouldn't be there, or find out that, so there would be like a 4-day turnaround before they would figure out that somebody had, at a minimum, because of the way it worked. But the same things are still happening. Checks are being intercepted, washed, and reissued to new payees, and then the victims are stuck, um, because the banks are a bureaucracy and they don't understand. They don't want, again, they're businesses. They don't want the liability. If they pay you out, then they're out. You know, um, and I mean, it's gotten bad. Like, the advice is if you have to write a check, and unfortunately, I have to write some checks. Is do not deposit them in mailboxes outside. Do not put them in your mailbox at your house. Do not deposit them in mailboxes like the big federal mailboxes outside of post office, or when they're where they have them on street corners and stuff. Those get tampered with. They are not foolproof by any means. As a matter of fact, our local police department, or our local post office, had FBI agents there because uh, we had some itinerant workers who were camping out at those post office boxes, and when nobody was looking, they were stealing mail, which is a federal crime, out of those post office boxes. So they always tell you, go in, uh, only use the post office boxes that are like inside. If you have to use those, but preferably get in line, have a postal service worker stamp it so that it gets put in the bin, in a protected area. Um, because it's becoming pervasive. And I know a lot of people don't think a lot about this, but at the end of the day, checks are still a major way that things are getting, that particularly large sums of money get transferred.
Which is why I think there's still a big push for digital currency and digital ID and
Correct.
all that jazz, which leads to tyranny problems.
It does. I mean, one solution,
Damned if you do, damned if
if
you
you don't.
don't.
Yep. So on the last thing I want to talk about, and again, this kind of relates to the whole thing that we're talking about, this erosion of trust. But PC Mag put out a survey. Well, they're summarizing survey results that they, I think, had commissioned from Incogni. Um, that reports 55% of Americans say they've reduced or stopped posting on social media. So the kind of the idea or the reasons when asked were they cite feeds full of irrelevant content, aggressively sponsored posts, politicalization, doom scrolling, and privacy concerns as the five major reasons. And then younger adults in particular report feeling that maintaining a public presence has become exhausting and work like, not fun. And I frankly, I fall into that boat. Um,
All of that is true.
I the only social media account I have, I have two still. Uh, one I log in maybe once a month if I'm lucky, more than likely once a quarter. And that's Facebook. And the only reason I have that is because Facebook having been around for so long, I manage some groups. And so I go in and I check on those groups, like if new people want to subscribe, because all groups became private in Facebook. They're not public anymore. Um, and I've even eliminated a lot of my friends and their people. I mean, people I still talk to on a daily basis just because their posts weren't showing up in my feeds anyway. And what it's funny is when you have no friends in your Facebook or very few friends, Facebook becomes aggressive about trying to get you to add friends. And so I've screwed with their algorithm for years now, and I just say don't know, don't know, don't know, don't know. And I mean, even in people I know, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to talk to these people via Facebook. That's the other thing is it's like there's not a whole lot of. I would rather interact in person or talk to them on the phone or text them directly, or have a group text with a group of friends than deal with the BS that Facebook is. I got rid of X. I have LinkedIn because I have to have LinkedIn for professional purposes. That's the only one I look at on a more relevant basis, and even it, I get a lot of crap that I don't want to, is not interesting or vital to me. But occasionally, at least the algorithms at LinkedIn will put something up that's relevant to what I'm doing that I would have not seen had I not seen it. Um, but what's obviously funny about it is a lot of other people have moved away from the other social media platforms, and you're seeing in your connections, you're seeing a lot more personal posts on LinkedIn, and they all start like this. Although LinkedIn is professional, is for professional networking. I felt it important to recognize my daughter or my son for some achievement, you know, and so then they have a picture of them with their kid, getting some award at school or a soccer trophy or whatever. Um, but those almost never existed before, and now you're starting to see them drift in, and you're also starting to see more of the posts where people are asking philosophical questions, to try to spark talking, but a lot of them are based on emotional feelings or political feelings. And, and I think if you're at least a Gen Xer like me, those you don't want to see because again, that falls into that politicalization. You know, I've seen friends tear their friendships apart over discussions on Facebook where if they had had it in person and they could see each other's face, they would have never said what they said. They would have couched it in a different way and walked away from it, maybe not agreeing with each other, but at least not hating each other.
It's a problem.
So let us know what you think. Send us some feedback to GizmoSapiens@gmail.com. That's GizmoSapiens@gmail.com. Or put it on a comment on show 279 on our website at www.gizmosapiens.com. And we'll see you on the digital flip side.
You've been listening to Gizmo Sapiens, a technology and entertainment podcast. You can reach us at our email address at gizmosapiens@gmail.com. That's GizmoSapiens@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you, and we'll see you next week from the digital flip side.